Welcome to Hot Iron Customs. Today we're going to be changing these spark plugs on the Jeep JK with a 3.8, and we'll get started with the cylinders. For anybody that's never done this, it's best to do them just one at a time, but if something happens, this will be a reference. If you're standing at the front of the Jeep looking at the motor, you'll have 2, 4, and 6 on this side, 1, 3, and 5 on this side. Alright, we'll come around here to the coil pack. On the, it's hard to see. On the coil pack, you'll have, let's see. Alright, I'm on the driver's side looking at the coil pack. You will have 5, 1 in the middle, 3 at the bottom. On the other side, you will have 2 at the top, 4 in the middle, and 6 at the bottom on this side. Maybe that'll help anybody that maybe cross their plug wires up, and they give them a reference. Because I just, alright, we're going over here to the plugs. I know people are, I know they say, oh well, they're pre-gapped, but get yourself a cheap spark plug gap checker and check every one of them before you put them in your truck, because I'll show you why. When they're in shipping, if I can get it in the box, if they're in shipping, this thing, you hear it beating around, it can bend that electrode down and close that gap. So in my opinion, I check every one of them, because to me there's no such thing as a, you know, they might have pre-gapped them at the factory, but after it beats around and comes from God only knows where, they ain't no telling what is done to that electrode. Now I'm using these NGK wires, ordered them off Amazon, fairly reasonable price. There's your number on them, and they actually come numbered with a sticker on them. So that'll help you out too with your, just, you know, 2 to 2, 4 to 4, and so on. But always use your gap checker before you put them in there, because they do get bent around. We'll go back over here to the Jeep. I'll show y'all something else before we get started on this and pause it. When you do the ones on the driver's side, it's easier if you got a couple of extensions or one big long extension, because then you can get your ratchet out here and you can work it, instead of trying to fight it down in here with all these hoses, and you ain't gonna be able to, you're not gonna be able to turn it. It's gonna be a pain. Alright, this side's pretty self-explanatory. They're right there, they're all out in the open, fairly easy to get to. So we're gonna check the gap on them plugs. We'll do this side and then we'll come back. Another debate on these before we get started is the use of Antiseize. I do not use it. If these plugs are silver like this, they have a nickel coating on them. I know that's a big debate. People are going to argue and fight about it, but it's basic electricity. I mean, this is a ground, the center is a positive. Think of it like that. If you put something, if you put too much of anything on here, it's going to cause it not to have a good ground. Therefore, your spark is not going to be as hot as it should be. I mean, to me, that's just basic electrical there. I mean, it don't get no more simple than that. Plus your Antiseize can change your torque values up to 20%, and you do not want to strip one of them aluminum heads. They ain't telling what it would cost you nowadays to fix it or buy another head. So if this plug was black oxide coated, I probably would not put them in the motor. I would go get the proper plug with a nickel coating and put them in there without anti-seize. You could put the black oxide in there with anti-seize, but like I said, you know, some people say, oh, we'll use copper anti-seize and this, that, and the other, but to me, that's just, that's not gonna cut it. I've never had a problem. If you put the right plug in there and you don't just white knuckle torque it in there and mess up the head, you should never have a problem. They're designing that. They've come a long way with spark plugs. Since we've touched on that, we're gonna get to it. We'll be back. All right, we checked the gap on the new plugs, and 3 of them was bent in. So the gap on these plugs are 50 thousandths. I don't know if you can read this thing. I've had it for 100 years. But you just slide the plug on there, you know, and it tells you what your gap is. It's not that hard to figure out. There's 100 videos on that. But they take a 5/8 spark plug socket. I have a bunch of these, thousands of these things, but I got this as a Duralast from AutoZone. It's got a magnet in it. It don't have the old rubber hose like the old ones. And I'm telling you, it's a lot nicer with the magnet in there, because I usually pull the rubber hose out because you can't get it off spark plug sometimes. But the magnet in there, man, it's great. It goes on, it's easy to pull off, it don't get bound up on the spark plug. So if you don't have one with a magnet, you want a neat little tool, that's a big magnet in there. And it comes on and off easy. It's way better than the old rubber ones. All right, we'll be back. The torque on these plugs is I believe it's 12 foot-pounds of torque, which is not a lot. So if you don't have a lot of mechanical experience, I'd probably recommend getting a torque wrench that would go down to 12 foot-pounds. You got to pay attention, some of them don't go down that low. But what I do is I usually just ease it down in there until it bottoms out. You know it's bottomed out. And then it don't take, and if you got a long ratchet, it's going to be real easy. And I just give it a little bit there, about 1/8 of a turn or so, and that's about it. That's all they need. They do not need to be wrenched down. I know some of the older plugs on the cast iron head, you kind of had to tighten them down because they had a compression washer on them. These are 12 foot-pounds. That's not much torque. So be real careful. Don't bear down on them. Just bottom them out, about 1/8 of a turn there, and that's it. But like I said, if you're not done a lot of mechanic work and stuff, I'd probably recommend just going down and getting you a torque wrench that would read 12, you know, down to 12 foot-pounds, 10. Check and see what it goes down to. All right. I suggest maybe having a long pair of needle nose pliers. I made these years ago just for doing spark plugs. I cut them off. That way they got just a little hooked in them. But you can do it with normal ones. The reason you're going to want that is if the old plug wires, if this piece pulls out of there, you're going to have to be able to reach in there and get it out with something. And it does happen. Sometimes even if you use the pliers to grab it and pull it off, that thing will still come out sometimes. So I highly suggest getting you a cheap pair of long needle nose pliers. They don't have to have that bend on it, but it does help in certain situations. Like I said, I've had these for years, so but that is a tool you might want to have before you start this project, because you may need it. We'll be back. All right, we're back with another tip. I got 3 6-inch extensions with the socket. If you use that on the driver's side, it literally took me about 7 minutes to change the driver's side plugs, and that is even doing the little video here, walking back and forth. It gets your ratchet up away from the motor, and you can, man, it don't take but a second. But that's a little tip. That's 3 6-inch extensions together with the socket on it, or if you had one long one about the same length, that is the perfect length for the driver's side. The passenger side is going to be a little different, so I will let you know. Thank you. All right, on your passenger side plugs, the front two, You can use a 3-inch extension with the socket. Works great on the back plug. I just use the socket. Now I do have this ratchet here. This is just a cobalt ratchet with a swivel head. I've had it for years, and that does help. You don't need $5,000 worth of tools to do this. It's a pretty long ratchet. I can't get my garbage camera here. Let me get a tape measure. I'll measure it. I'll be right back. Alright. The total length of the ratchet from end to end is a little bit over 11 inches. About 11.5 inches long. This is a great tool for doing spark plugs. I've had, like I said, it's just a cobalt and Lowe's. It makes it a lot easier doing plugs. See, I read on the internet, I see things on the internet, oh, you gotta take the fender and the battery box, and it takes 12 hours. This is not a bad job. This is one of the easiest spark plug jobs I think I've ever done, to tell you the truth. If anybody thinks this little motor's bad, they better not do any mechanic work, because there's some that is awful. I mean, you got to pull intakes, go under the cars. I mean, this is easy. This side, the passenger side, is a little tougher, but like I said, it's still easy. Them tools right there would probably help you out a lot. That ratchet is nice to have for doing plugs. So we'll be back. Alright, we're back. Here's another touchy controversy here with your the dielectric grease you put into these boots. Some people, they'll say, oh, just squirt it in there and fill that up and push it on your spark plug. That kind of goes back to the conductivity part of it, because the whole point in this grease is to not conduct electricity. So if you fill up the end of this boot and stick that spark plug in there, it gets all over up here, and that's going to create a conductivity problem. Some people might disagree. I don't know. I do a lot of electrical work on the side, and that just don't make sense to cover up your connection with it. I don't understand. But, you know, to each his own. This is just my theory. So I put the grease on a piece of cardboard. I take a Q-tip, dip it up, and put it in the boot. Both ends. I know some people, I am not saying do not use this. You do need to use this. It does help. Especially if you ever have to work on it. But if on the side of the road or something. But if I change plugs, I'm changing the wires. I'm not going to change spark plugs and not change the wires. That don't make any sense. But use your Q-tip. Coat the inside of your boot. That way you keep, some may still get on there. But you're not just gobbing the end of this full. I mean, the whole point of that, because if that conducted electricity, it would shoot the spark out the side of the boot and cause a misfire. So we know it does not conduct electricity. If you fill that up and you get it on top of your electro feed there, it could possibly cause a problem. I know some people say, oh, I've been doing it for years, but it's still a possibility that could happen. Alrighty, we'll be back. Thank you. Alright, another thing about the grease, and this has happened, I've seen it. If you just gob that in there, and then you try to push it down on that spark plug, you want to make sure it pushes down till it clicks and makes a good connection. If you gob this full of grease, and that spark plug pushes that grease up in that boot, it can cause what would be similar like a hydraulic compression, and you might not push that boot up on there all the way, and then you'll be riding down the road and the boot will come off. I've seen that happen, and it can compact in there and cause problems. All right, we'll be back. All right, we're back. It's done. Filming video and all probably took me 45 minutes. Now what we're gonna do here I'm gonna reroute these plug wires because where the factory routes them back here, they're laying all on top of the hot engine heater hoses. They on the EGR tube. They come way back around like this. That really don't make no sense to me. So we're gonna reroute them up here. We'll put a few zip ties on them so they have plenty of clearance between everything once they're pulled down. I mean, I got my whole hand under there. And we're gonna zip tie them nice and neat. That way they can't flop around. It's just better to bring them over because this gets them out of that heat and it's gonna make them last longer. But also, every one of these wires that ran around behind that motor has got bad spots from heat or rubbing on something. Numerous spots. They're all over them. That's just that just not. I mean, that's not a smart move. I don't understand why they did that. But we're gonna run them over the top. The NGK wires are plenty long enough to go over the top there. Zip tie everything up nice and neat so you don't get into any anything to wear a hole in them. But like I said, I've read a bunch of things on the internet talking about this is an awful job and takes all day. I just did it in my yard, not in a shop. Limited tools, 45 minutes, and that's filming the video. We'll recap on the tools. You're gonna possibly need some needle nose pliers. They ain't necessarily got to be these, like I said. 3-inch extension, 3 6-inch extensions. You don't have to have this, but it helps. This is a cobalt ratchet. You get it at Lowe's. It ain't got to be a cobalt or a snap-on or, you know, whatever you can afford. And pick you up a spark plug gapper. They're only well, I don't know, I've had this thing for 100 years. They're only a few dollars, man. And check the plugs before you put them in. I don't know, you know, this, I don't even know how to explain what I want to say, but oh, they're pre-gapped. They was pre-gapped before they was shipped from God knows where, and the mailman throwed them out the window. You know how they do packages. They don't care. Get one of these. Check your gap. It's 50 thousandths on this Jeep. This is a JK. It's an 09 with a 3.8. Get it done, man. It's not as hard as they say. It's not that bad. But these tools do. You don't probably not gonna need that. But minimum tools, nothing expensive. And get out and have fun working on your projects. That's what it's all about. And I'm gonna say, like I said, with the Never Seize deal, to each his own, but I wouldn't use it as long as these plugs are coated. They're silver looking like that. I would not put it on there. I wouldn't put it on there anyway. All right, y'all have a good day. This is Hot Iron Customs. Y'all get out, have fun doing your projects, enjoy yourself, be safe.